Movie stars have shaped American politics in a number of ways. I think they've shaped them in terms of, first, merging entertainment in politics and turning cinema into a vehicle that can not only entertain an audience but can educate them, and can educate them into all kinds of things, including how to think politically. That people who normally wouldn't spend the time reading a magazine or listening to a speaker will watch a film and suddenly pick up messages from that film, whether it's starting in 1905 with a film like The Kleptomaniac, or going to Charlie Chaplin, The Great Dictator, or Apocalypse Now. These are films that are both political and entertaining. It depends on what you're looking at. If you are asking who has done more to reshape the very nature, the very guts of American politics, the nature of the government, there's no question it's the Hollywood right. That people like, from Louis B. Mayer to George Murphy and Ronald Reagan, particularly Murphy and Reagan, really were the leaders of the conservative revolution, or the media leaders. That is, there were many people in the conservative movement who were prominent, who were the ideas people, who were doing the networking. But Murphy and Reagan came in and were able to sell conservatism to a mass population in a way politicians like Barry Goldwater could not. Their impact has been much more around issues, whether it was publicizing anti-fascism in the 1930s, or civil rights in the 1950s, or the anti-war movement in the 60s and 70s, or the feminist movement, or the anti-war movement in terms of Iraq. These are people who have had a much greater impact than the Hollywood right. But again, if you're saying who's done more to shape the very core of American politics, it's the Hollywood right. The Hollywood right has been different in that they were actually the ones to pioneer the use of media in electoral campaigns. They were much more effective in creating the short sound bites, and in also getting away from the traditional going out on the campaign circuit and shaking hands, and instead using television as a way to reach mass voters. And eventually the Hollywood left would adapt that, but the Hollywood right were more pioneers in that than the left. There's no question it's the election of Ronald Reagan as President of the United States in 1980, because conservatives had been gaining power, particularly from 1964 on. And in fact, after Barry Goldwater's defeat as the Republican presidential candidate in 1964, conservative leaders gathered afterwards and said, okay, we're going to do a different strategy. We're going to really launch a grassroots conservative movement. We're going to try to start with people being elected as onto the Board of Educations, then onto city councils, then onto state government, and work our way up systematically. They were ironically following a model pioneered by Saul Alinsky, who was a left Democrat organizer in Chicago. What a celebrity endorsement can do, such as the one we had in our last presidential election, Oprah Winfrey, is people like Oprah can actually reach in to the 50% who don't vote. And on her show, she's also explaining, here's what I think Barack Obama stands for, here are some of the issues, and suddenly people trust Oprah. And it isn't as though they're going to vote because Oprah says vote, but Oprah doesn't tell them to vote. Oprah just says, pay attention. And that's what she can do. She can get those people to pay attention, and not just her, other celebrities. And it's happened on the right as well as happened on the left, where you've had conservatives like Charlton Heston going out on the road. Chuck Norris has been a real strong Republican activist, another action star. And they draw out crowds, many of whom really don't care, but suddenly they're thinking, well, if Arnold or Bruce Willis or this celebrity or Charlton Heston is endorsing them, well, let me take a closer look. That's good for democracy.